Hello. Well, this poetry podcast is kind of developing a life of its own. When I started, I thought that I would follow a kind of traditional university type syllabus and deal with some poems which would be very useful for a kind of poetry 101 course. However, as it's developing, I think that what I will do is just just do a podcast whenever I feel like talking about something. So until this point, I've done the introduction to poetry, which is useful, I think. I've looked at a couple of poems which are really important to me, The Wasteland and No Second Troy by W.B. Yeats. Of course, Yeats did better poems than No Second Troy. In the future, probably I will look at Sailing to Byzantium, which, in my opinion, is probably his best poem. Um, However, this time, today, I think that I will look at a poem of my own called The Miracle. And it may be interesting to some people who write poetry to think about the way in which I put it together. I'm not going to give away too many personal details. I don't think that's really necessary. I'm not going to do the hard work for anyone either. So, as with anything artistic, really have to experience the art. Some kind of explanation cannot take the cannot take the place of the art. So I will give some idea about the genesis of the piece. First of all, it's a long piece, surprisingly long. It's put together in about I think it's 5 sections, and it all came together very quickly. I'd been studying Indian religions for a long time, and they were very important to me too. As a younger man, I did yoga and then uh, studied Vedanta, meditation. Later on, I developed an interest in Buddhism, and this combined with my earlier interest in Vedanta and yoga. And yeah, it was bubbling inside, and I felt at some point it had to come out. The Buddhism became very important to me as I developed something more than an academic interest in it, and it became part of my life really. So I had to go to India for a short time, just 10 days, and while I was there, I had some business to do, and it was great for me to go around these places that I'd heard about and that uh, meant a lot to to me and to everybody, like the Taj Mahal and other places. And while I was there, all these ideas that I'd had about Indian religions and the studying of Indian religions and its importance to me in terms of meditation and way of life and so on and so forth. It all came together, and suddenly, when I finished my business each day, I would go back to my hotel room and start writing, and it really came quite easily. It's a kind of platitude. Everyone seems to say this about something they think is good, that it came easily. It did. It was the culmination of a large part of my previous life, and suddenly I was there on the spot in India, and it was a kind of inspiration to me. Well, how did I put it together? Well, the sections, well, I don't know. I'd worked previously with um, an Indian doctor in Saudi Arabia, Anil Patil, and he had been so interested and so proud of his nation's religion and Vedanta, the Vedas, and we used to speak together. He had a hard time in Saudi Arabia because the local people didn't like his religion, and he did insist on talking about it a lot, which was brave of him, really. So he didn't stay very long, a couple of years. Uh, he he couldn't be repressed, really. He was a jolly kind of character who always full of life, and he soon got out of Saudi Arabia. So yeah, so he kind of stuck in my mind. He always used to say that India was India was gone now, and that it was better just to get out and disseminate the religious truths around the rest of the world, because what had made India great was no longer there. So that kind of stuck in my mind, and I suppose I used him as a sort of basis, some kind of foundation for the poem, and a starting point. So the idea that India is not what it used to be right now, but it has profound religious truths to teach the rest of the world. Probably it's my own nature to develop things sometimes in ironic, even sarcastic ways. Uh, but a lot of it was true. So I did used to go and watch movies about avatars and gods with him in his house and with his family. And he did say that his daughter, they were convinced, was the reincarnation of his grandmother. So all these things came together in my head, and yeah, I thought, okay, well, let's use that as a foundation. So there is Anil, who is kind of let's have him as someone who is thinking about the past greatness of India, and my addition was just to say, well, why did the decline happen, and how can it improve? Can it improve? So I suppose from my own tradition, all the watching of movies and reading of thrillers, Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett and so on and so forth, gave me this idea of somebody, Anil, employing someone to actually go around India trying to find out the reasons for decline. And that's where Harry Chand came from. Even sounds a bit like Chandler, but and the Harry, of course, but it's an Indian name in this case, Harry Chand. Although it will remind Western readers of some kind of gumshoe detectives, I think, and that was the idea. So yeah, so I have a section. I'm being too slow here. The podcast, I think I only have 25 minutes. So give um, to to give an idea of the basic structure. I thought could begin with that then, with Anil as a foundation, and weave everything else into it. Weave my experiences of India. While I was there, I was writing it in India. The experience of beggars coming up while I was in taxis and thrusting their children at me, and visiting Ashgadan, and uh, the Taj Mahal. All these were experiences that happened to me while I was in India. So I wove these things into the structure, and also perhaps the most serious section um, is about the Buddha at Rajgir, Vulture's Peak. So that, I suppose, is a part of the miracle of the title, and that's, I think, a wholly serious section. So all these ideas about India all came together in this poem. Um, I, you could look at individual sections in detail, but I don't really want to do that. I don't have time to do it. However, what I will do right now is I will read the poem, or as much of it as I can, and possibly stop sometimes and make a few comments. So, right, let's try to find it. Okay, here it is. So, yeah, I thought I would somehow begin in a conversational tone. Don't want to begin with high poetry. You begin laying out the basic concept of Anil, hiring someone to find out the reasons for India's decline. So part one, meet Harry Chand. Harry Chand, investigative journalist, determined to illuminate. I'm sorry, actually, I need to make this a little bit smaller because I can't read it. Let me start again. Let me start again. Right. So Harry Chand, investigative journalist, determined to illuminate the terminal decline of Bharat with a special roving commission from Anil Patil, concerned Kshatriya of Maharashtra province, late professor of dermatology at Jizan Health College, Saudi Arabia. Now expatriated to New Zealand, living along the outreaches of the Western world in Tauranga, dispensing Ayurvedic remedies to dissipated Europeans. Oh, where did it all go wrong? Anil was trying to get a New Zealand passport at that time. I think he gave it up later and became very successful in India, actually, the real Anil Patil with Ayurveda. Ayurvedic remedies, in fact, but in India, not outside India. So, Tauranga. I've never been to New Zealand, but I had the idea of Tauranga as like an outreach, one of the last places in the Western world. So there he is. He wants to get away to New Zealand, and he will be dispensing Ayurvedic remedies to dissipated Europeans. And then it changes. So in the next section, when Patanjali's sutras explained the Vedic scheme, Siddhartha's wheel of Dharma already ruled supreme, while Krishna and Arjuna discussed the pith of life, the chariots of ignorance disseminated strife. At Vulture's Peak, the Buddha revealed the tantric path, but my dear friend Anil Patil only makes me laugh. So, a few brush strokes here, painting a picture, and the mood is elusive, not too heavy. It's kind of ironic and even light. And it continues in that way, talking about actually one of the experiences I had in India while I was there writing this about the Taj Mahal. And of course, like all tourists, I learnt all about the Mughals and what happened to Shah Jahan and Mumtaza. Excuse me. The Mughals came, the Mughals built. Shah Jahan, to his cost, spent all his wealth on Mumtaza until his realm was lost. In latter days he viewed the Taj through iron prison bars, incarcerated by a son who'd kicked him in the arse. Caste, 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 deflated India. If I can't touch you, and you can't touch me, how happy can we ever be? Brahmin priests and all their rituals, friends to the worldly ones, undid India. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, did you ever really need them? Brahma created without their incantations. Vishnu, Krishna, Buddha, sustained and enlightened, indifferent to their technical mumbo-jumbo. Shiva's dance of death destroys, regardless of Brahminical threads and pride. Pride destroyed India. And yet, Avalokiteshvara's infinite compassion still abounds, his 1,000 arms waiting to rescue all sentient beings from the chains of their ignorance into the Sambhogakaya, the Buddha field. Om Mani Padme Hum. The next section refers directly to me walking around Delhi and seeing different things, experiencing different parts of the Delhi life. I watched the snake charmer's cheap trickeries outside Rajghat. He wanted money. Is it possible that one who is able to control the dancing snakehead can be in need of a few coppers from me? O dissolute nation who had everything the world systems can provide, but threw it all away, what price must you pay for your own unvirtue? There is a change of mood now, lighter, introducing Harry Chand, the man employed, a detective presumably, the gumshoe, employed by O'Neill to find out about the decline, the reasons for the decline of India. So try to reflect the the kind of humor of that idea in the rather simple and direct rhyme. Harry Chand's a secret guy. You'll find him in the bar, listening to private talk, not near nor yet too far. Whenever India's discussed, he's got it on his mind that something just might be picked up, explaining her decline. And as we know, he works for one inextricably bound to the travails of Bharat and the Ganges rushing sound. It's good to know that even when Anil is in his dreams, Harry Chand is on the case and life's not what it seems. That's the end of the first part, and then move on to the second part, which is more about my experiences in Delhi during this short period of time I spent there, Delhi musings. I spent some time in Delhi's maze of beggars, rickshaws, bikes, and shit, and everywhere I felt the gaze of those who would abandon it. A mother with her bundled child tapped upon the moving glass. Her eyes roamed, desperate and wild, and wouldn't let me pass. I offered up some gift of notes, and suddenly there came 100 more in tattered coats, and each one had no name. I looked upon their greedy eyes and waved the driver on, and inwardly, without surprise, I felt compassion gone. So, yeah, kind of unfortunate that country that has philosophical ideas full of such compassion can also be filled with such suffering. And I kind of ruminate on that and think about it in the next section. The poor and desolate are our friends. They teach us generosity. Let's love our enemies better than our relatives, as those who hate us give an opportunity for the practice of patience. Perhaps one day I can become wild and homeless myself, though without the unmindfulness of a Delhi street beggar. No, but with the green tinge of an enlightened Milarepa, seeing beyond the limitations of Nirmanakaya. Then there is a section on Ashkedan, the famous temple built in Delhi of stone, kind of rose-colored stone. Ashkedan is beautiful, and in just 5 years volunteers built its stone temple in the old way, fashioned from the imagination and love without steel and iron. Krishna consciousness pervades the essence. Om Hari Krishna, Om Hari Krishna, Om, Om, Om. Harry Chand is on the case. He sees all but says little. Everything is placed in the balance. Dr. Anil will have his answer. Now we move on to part 3, Dr. Anil in motion and still life. So if I am using Dr. Anil as some kind of foundation, then I have to look at his life a little bit more in detail. There was some element of humour here as well, because Dr. Anil always did give me, he made me feel good, but he also made me laugh. Dr. Anil gave up all his glamour when he travelled to Jazan. Nevertheless, he tried to show the Jazanis, through an innate pride in his nation, the glory of the Vedas, what they are, had been, and ever would be. Even when they scoffed and asked him if the sacred cow had been his mother, he persevered, watching old movies about gods and avatars in his pleasing home, surrounded by a loving family, his wife Priyanka and blessed daughter Vishaka. who as the reincarnation of Anil's maternal grandmother was somehow close to Shiva, lord of the dance. Dr. Anil, disciple of Shankaracharya, why did you come to Jazan? Get away as quick as you can. Talking's just the barrier to the enlightenment of man. Leave it all to Harry Chand. Harry's built for sniffing out the meaning of life and the reasons for strife. He's a smooth operator, and sooner or later he'll find out all you want to know of virtue, knowledge, death, and view. He'll show you what to do, explain the transcendental light of wisdom just for you. Sorry, I should have disabled these notifications at the bottom of my screen, but fortunately people calling me on Facebook and so on and so forth. So sorry for that, but I will plow on. Yeah, so I kind of see Harry Chand as a comical figure, of course, and so there's some comical, very simplistic rhyming when he's spoken about. Om Hari Hari Chand, take refuge in the Hari. So the next section, Vulture's Peak, is more serious. Vulture's Peak, Rajgir. So the place where the Buddha gave his most complete teachings, and in the Mahayana tradition, where many of the greatest sutras were given and expounded. The Lotus Sutra, for example, or the Heart Sutra. These are not usually emphasized or even read in the Theravada tradition, but for the Mahayana tradition, they're very important. And there is the idea of lots and lots of bodhisattvas together, people who have come back just to help others, semi divine creatures, you can say, all listening to the Buddha in thousands. Rajgir was a setting for the Dharma's second spin, the Prajna Paramita core of emptiness within. Thus have I heard, at Vulture's Peak, the thusly gone one taught, all aspirants who truly seek to find a secret thought. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the blessings showered down, the diamond and the lotus show, the heart within the crown. Assembled bodhisattvas watched Shunyata's face arise from union with emptiness and in the Buddha's eyes. O India, you were not fit to learn the tantric truth from Udayana's great Pandit, nor Krishna's guileless youth. Ganges, Yamuna, Saraswat, sweet Gangetic plains, holy rivers of Bharat, filled by monsoon rains. Why did the flowing Dharma cease? Why was the Tantra dumb? Why did that mighty soul decrease? Why didn't moksha come? Why did the Buddha at Rajgir decide to hide the truth from India and all the world in Nagar's serpent tooth? Oh, why is Ramakrishna's faith, Nandranath's noble jewels, diluted by some preton wraith into a billion fools? This is kind of the poetic high point of the piece. A lot of people will have heard of the Ramakrishna movement in India, and of course Ramakrishna's greatest disciple was Nandranath, better known as Swami Vivekananda. Then, to finish, we've reached the poetic high point, so now it's just time to wind everything up. So let's have Harry's report to Anil about the reasons for the decline of India. So part 5, Harry reports back to Anil. Slowly, Anil rebuilds his life in Taranga, and even Vishaka and his dear departed grandmother, who now holds a New Zealand passport, is are content. Life is good. Furthermore, Harry Chan's report has just arrived from Delhi, giving meaty food for thought. According to Harry, life is a bitch, and we just have to try and get over it. Anil, on the whole, finds himself in concurrence with these noble sentiments. Om Tat Sat. And that's the end. That's the end of the poem. So it's not for me to comment on how well it all hangs together. I hope it has inner coherence, and I am encouraged to think so by the way in which everything just seemed to come together during those 10 days I was in India. All my interest in Indian philosophy and religion, and my own attempts at meditation, and looking around Delhi and India, and my past relationship with Anil. So I hope that I've been able to give you some small insight into how or the reasons why I wrote the poem. I will end here, as I think the podcast has to be less than 27 minutes. So just approaching that point now. So again, I hope this has been useful.